On a separate note, so you're fluent in English and Mandarin, and as a software engineer, you also know some programming languages, which is the language that we use to communicate with computers. What is some of the similarities or differences in the languages you use to communicate with humans, natural languages, English, Mandarin, and the languages you use to communicate with computers?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic to discuss, right? Because we have those experts like linguistics, right? So I believe they're like expert in these domains. But for me, that apparently the natural language has a lot of things in common with the programming language because they are languages. They are languages, so they will have like syntax, they will have semantics, right? Things like this. That means that commonly when you speak English or Chinese, so there is this underlying structure you're actually using, but you don't feel it every minute, every second, but there is this structure here. You're going to be using these nouns, verbs, different forms of constructs in your language, right? And it is actually the same case with programming languages, because if you have some experience of writing code, you know that there is this keywords, right? So sometimes these keywords and different structures. Let's say if you would like to specify a sequence structure that you do one thing, one action, and followed by another action, right? And you would also have this selection structure that based on one specific condition, whether you might go this way or the other way, right? And you will also have like repetition structure that you do something a couple of times until some condition is met or unsatisfied, right? So these kind of structures are like quite similar to what we have in natural languages, right? So I think in a very general sense, they are quite similar to each other.
Are there any key differences?
Yeah, for sure. The key differences here, I would say, for me, I would say the level of ambiguity, right? Okay, so when you speak natural language, no matter whether you're speaking English or Chinese or maybe other types of languages, so if you make mistakes, that's basically no problem, right? Because the other guy you will have a very good chance to understand you well.
Yeah, from the context.
Yeah, from the context, and you don't have a very standard way to speak English, right? Even if you're speaking in a wrong way, that doesn't affect that much, right?
Sure. From my experience learning Chinese, like I will often say something. My teachers will often say, "I understand what you're saying, but we don't say it in this way."
Oh yeah. That's pretty much the exact case, right? So, but you probably have the experience that sometimes some people may get the exact opposite meaning of because you're like, for example, making a mistake here, right? Or sometimes someone else may get quite confused about what you are saying, right? Because he or she may have different possibilities to interpret your words, your sentences, right? And they are quite uncertain about that. So this is about the ambiguity, right? And undefined interpretations, what we call it undefined semantics or behavior, right, of your language, which means that you say something, but the whole system does not define. If you say something like this, what does that mean? The whole system does not define, right? So natural language does not have too many things like this. But in the case of programming language, sometimes we have the exact specification of the language, which means that you can only speak the language. When I say speak, actually probably you're programming or maybe you're coding. When you speak this kind of programming language, you have a certain way, a limited way, a required way to do that. If you are not doing this in an expected way, then probably the programming language system won't allow you to do so. So the way they reject you is by triggering some errors or not, or things like this, right? And one of the other instance here is that programming languages are commonly avoiding ambiguity as much as possible, because if you have ambiguity in a programming language, then the computers might get quite confused to execute your language, to enforce it, because the computer is not aware the real meaning of your programs, of your language. It might be a disaster because for different computers, they might have inconsistent execution of the same programs, of the same programming languages. Then that might be a disaster, because the computers cannot interact with each other, because they don't have the same, they don't have the common knowledge. I would say that would be one of the major difference here.
Yeah, I have to say that's a powerful combination of languages that you speak. English, probably the most spoken language worldwide, with Mandarin also, and then programming languages, you can communicate with computers, so it's a powerful combination.
Yes, that will be a lot of conversations in my case.
Yeah.